Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show, The Strange Reality with Dave Emmons. And I have a guest. I'm going to introduce her just here in a minute, but I always have something to say. I think the way the world's going now, the political thickness that is really permeating everything, I think we need to understand that we're here in a spiritual soul form. And my guest will probably tell you that too, that we should love, be kind, and we should be supportive of each other, and we should forgive each other. And then the bad part about it, we don't want to be mean, angry, or hostile. We need to separate those things and get together and with peace in mind and love. Well, in saying that, uh, I know myself, I go through a lot of different things with the UFO and ET topics, but we're not going to be covering that totally this time. And I've had a different sort of guest the last week or so, and I got, and this is why I wanted Myra to come on board and do a show. Her name is Myra, and it's Medhurst, and she's from Australia. To tell you about her bio here. It's very, she gets into a lot of different stuff. She's a priestess, new earth leader, and ascension mentor. Myra Medhurst specializes in the evolution of human consciousness with 17 years of experience in the personal and spiritual development industries. She has completed 4,300 plus souls, highest mission readings globally, and shared her teachings with communities of 2.3 million people. Her clients range from heads of Fortune 500 companies, and I told her a while ago that was impressive, Hay House published authors, creatives, seekers, star seeds, that's a good one, and visionaries. So she is here to ignite the multidimensional and quantum human potential, awaken the Atlantian and Lemurian realities of those ready to take an accelerated journey of 5D leadership to co-create a new golden age. You can match, or you can match, not match. I don't think you can match her. You can catch her. That's my glasses, Myra. I always read into the. I got to get better glasses somehow or another. You can catch Myra at one of her international retreats held in Egypt and Vanuatu. Vanuatu. Am I saying that right? Vanuatu. Online.
Vanuatu.
Okay. An online mentorship group and private one-to-one programs and live in-person events held at Temple of the Priestess, Sunshine Coast, Australia. Myra grew up in a naturally rich and remote mining town, Weipa. She can correct me later on that when she's going to be talking about that. For North Queensland, Australia, going to school barefoot and climbing coconut trees. I thought that was neat. Now a mother, her son climbs the coconut trees. Well, thank you for coming all the way from Australia, Myra Medhurst. Thank you so much for being here. And could you tell us just a little bit about what I didn't say in the bio? I know you've got a lot of experience in a lot of different things, but start telling us what you're doing now and what your plans will be soon.
Dave, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And yeah, thank you for inviting me onto your show. Welcome to the listeners and viewers. So I think you've done a pretty good job explaining what I'm up to, but
It's in
this
your it's
where
in your it's in your words, but my glasses don't do a very good job. It skips a line and I can't read it. I
yeah.
people say, "Well, Dave, get yourself together and get some glasses." I do have prescription glasses, but they still don't work. They're reading glasses. It's reading glasses. That's about it. Sorry for interrupting you, Myra, but Myra, continue on what you're saying about your hometown and everything.
Well, to bring you up to speed is that next week I'm actually returning to that small mining town, the town which I grew up in, and I've not been there for 36 years. So
Yeah.
I'm actually returning to the place of my childhood next week. And here's the fascinating thing about it, is that the scientific community are now peered, researched, reviewed papers have been released, and they are now discovering submerged lands, vast lands submerged under the water up the top north of the west coast of Queensland, Australia. Now, this is a place that my mum would take me to every afternoon to watch the sunset. So I've actually been looking out over these waters where they're now discovering, not just making it up, like actually discovering with the new thermo reading instruments that they have, they're able to identify massive land mass, which they're now calling submerged continents of Atlantis.
They're
So
they're actually using Atlantis as
they use
word?
the word Atlantis
Wow.
in this publication,
What kind of
in the
structures?
paper.
What kind of structures are they? Temples and
Very, very large continents that they believe were connecting Australia with the other countries above us. Now, how I remember Atlantis, and especially older than that, parts of Lemuria, all of these continents were once joined and a larger land mass.
right.
And there's lineages and cultures and song lines. Our indigenous call them the song lines. And I believe it's like these song lines are beginning to speak again and reveal more about our past, the history of this planet, and also the history of humanity, who we really, truly are.
Yeah, I heard that they found more structures actually in the Philippines, and that's where my wife is from. And they found this one structure. There's about 10 years ago, maybe more. It's off the coast of Japan. So the whole Pacific Rim there was probably full of life, and it went all the way down to Australia, and maybe that's where Atlantis was.
Yeah, well, how I remember Atlantis is that it was the predominant civilization that was around the whole planet. That's why you can get an individual saying, no, I really remember, I feel connected to Atlantis in regions of Greece. And then you can have another individual say, no, I feel really drawn to Egypt. It's like there's something in Egypt for me. And what's happening here is that both are correct. Atlantis was the Earth at the time. It wasn't just a specific region. It was if you could imagine like the Roman Empire when it was in its most far-reaching kind of structures.
Right.
That is what Atlantis was like. It covered the whole planet. And so those people that are saying, no, it was this place or that place, they're both correct. And what's happening there is that they're remembering the predominant Akashic records, their predominant remembrance. That's why you can then get another person say, no, Atlantis for me is very Australian based.
So,
and Dave, did you know the region I live in, there are over 3 pyramids here?
yeah, I've heard that.
And people can't see them.
Yeah.
Or they won't talk about them.
Yeah. I guess you're saying these other cities, like they're saying off of the coast of Spain or even off of Cuba, a lot of these places could be satellite cities or connected cities to Atlantis, in which the headquarters was in Australia. Probably what they're finding out, what you're saying. And yeah, Myra, continue on. This is exciting. I like this.
Yeah. And so in Australia, especially in the region I live, I'm doing a documentary soon to document the pyramids that are easily a simple drive from where I live. There are hieroglyphics here. There are artifacts now being found of jewelry, Egyptian jewelry. And because Australia is such a naturally rich continent, we have huge gold deposits here in Australia.
Oh, don't say that. You'll have a
There is talk and story from the Indigenous here, and those that have the perception and the ability to remember, is that it was common for the Egyptians and star racers before that to take their flying ships here, land. There was some trade going on, and they would take our gold deposits and take them back to Egypt, into the bigger temples and the bigger kings and queens of that time.
Now, Myra, those that flat mountain that's out in the middle of nowhere, what do they call that mountain?
Uluru.
Uluru. And the
Mm.
indigenous people, they claim their spirits there and don't go there because they'll take you in and you'll be gone. Uh, Now, is that part of the Atlantean type of civilization there, Myra?
Well, that's quite Pleiadian. That has a very strong Pleiadian history.
Mm.
So the indigenous still speak that they are able to see the spacecraft come in and arrive and dock in and around Uluru. The Pleiadians are known to come out of the cracks of the rock
Mm-hmm.
and communicate. So the highest, when groups go out there, retreat, are facilitated out there, if you can get into such a high frequency and you're able to kind of thin the veil,
Mm-hmm.
you're able to connect very quite easily with the Pleiadians.
And they're humanoids, right? The Pleiadians?
Yeah, humanoids appearing quite elegant, quite tall,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more of a kind of fluorescent light texture
Yeah,
to their structure, but absolutely able to, like a humanoid for sure.
right.
And Dave, did you know there's such a famous artwork here in Australia? It's called the Seven Sisters that the Indigenous Australians paint. And what they're painting is they're painting the 7-star constellation of the Pleiades.
Yeah, Pleiades. Yeah.
And they are the seven sisters because how they see them is in the feminine frequency of what I term also the Pleiadian star mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And these are our galactic parents.
Right. They have them nurturing us, taking care of us, and actually DNA resetting us, I guess, a lot of times. And that's actually in my sci-fi book, and I won't talk about that, but those stories are there. That's why I know a little bit about the Seven Sisters. But you talk about, let's go to your hometown. I might have butchered it by trying to say it. Would you say it and tell us what you're going to be doing there in your hometown and how close it is to all that action, Myra?
Yeah, so the town is called Weipa. It is in the very top of Cape York Peninsula. It is very indigenous land as well. And it is quite a personal quest for me going back there. But there is, I feel, some ceremony, some grid work and energetic work that I will be doing. It feels very priestess-like for me of going back and acknowledging the waters that I was shown, the position of the sunset. It feels very connected to nature, but also I'm just continuing to be with the lands that they're now talking, the scientific community are kind of bringing out into the light. Dave, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what this path represents for me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my journey has been just trusting the process and following the breadcrumbs on the next step. And it's kind of an interesting point about my journey is that I didn't go seeking Atlantis or Lemuria. I never knew that these civilizations existed. And quite frankly, I thought they were fantastical places in Disney children's movies.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was working in Melbourne City in a corporate job, deeply unhappy, completely out of my element, but enjoying the paycheck, but miserable at the same time. And so on my lunch break, I would leave the office and retreat into the Theosophical Book Society, which was just a lovely bookshop with a total different quiet energy. And I would walk the aisles of the bookstore on most of my lunch breaks. And on one particular day, I was walking the aisle right in the middle. I was nowhere near the bookshelves, and a book, I want to say fall or fell off the shelf to make sense of what actually happened.
Right.
But honestly, the book flew. It flew off the shelf.
Yeah.
And it went up in the air. It landed in front of me, cover up, and exactly where my next step would have been. So it well and truly stopped me in my tracks. And the title of the book was Discover Atlantis.
That is
that was
the synchronicity message meant for you, and it fell right in your path. I know I've had upwards, and I had paranormal things that happened to me, and a message right in front of me. And I've seen books come off the shelves and things of that nature, just like you. It's paranormal. And if when you're connected like you are, you're connected to this consciousness. Well, they know it. They're going to give you signs, and they're going to let you, see and hear things that should direct you. Do you feel compelled, Myra, like I do, to pursue the truth and what we're looking for?
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah.
And like it's saturating my very being,
Mhm.
because where we're heading is into this Satya Yuga. If your audience are familiar with Indian philosophy and the yugas, everything has to do with the age of integrity and the age of truth. The fifth dimensional frequency refers to and is related to the fifth chakra in the body, which is the throat chakra.
Mhm.
That's the fifth major chakra in the body. And the throat is also the blue color ray. So as we ascend and evolve as a humanity, it is in our best interest collectively to speak the truth through our throats.
Yeah.
The blue color ray is what is actually going to invite our star brothers and sisters, our galactic races. That's why some of them are called the blue beings. I mean, your backdrop is very blue as well.
Right.
But as we step more and more into that color ray, that is also what calls the neighboring planets to go, oh, great, planet Earth is getting it. They're getting it. And now we can access and reveal ourselves to them, because we're energetically at a frequency that is able to assimilate the truth.
Right. I think that
Does that make sense?
yes, it does. You're making a lot of sense, and I just want to get into your mind and see how that clicks. But a lot of what they're saying is history is not what we think it is. It's been a complete lie. The elites, the priests, the high priest, and all these people in charge of us have kept us in the dark about our history. And a lot of times they don't want us to find out about, like what you're finding out in Australia, that Atlantis could have been there. Also, your hometown had a mine, and you said your dad was, I guess he was supervising that mine. What did they have in that mine? Was that coal or gold that they were digging, Myra?
I wish it was a lot of gold.
Okay.
It wasn't gold, but I mean, Australia is absolutely sprinkled with gold
Mhm.
everywhere. You can still absolutely find it as a layman just going out into the bush, still to this day,
Mhm.
in the creeks and in the rivers. But no, particularly in that region, it has a very high concentration of bauxite, which is a real red rock, red bronze color.
Mhm.
They actually use it in a process to then make alumina, which is a white powder which coats sheets of paper, makes things glossy and shiny.
Mhm.
And then from alumina, they then can make it into aluminium, which is all
Okay.
your aluminium soft drink cans,
Right.
and other things.
I want to tell on to the audience. You were saying in your notes here that you when you were a young girl you walked around barefooted like it was out in the country, and you was way out in the boonies there, and you went up and you got hunted coconuts, and you climbed the trees, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
what
it's
what
I
a
mean, this
deal!
is back in the 80s when you could do anything before oh God, before the vaccine schedule and everything else got
Yeah,
quite intense.
right.
But no, this was a free childhood for me. I feel very, very lucky. It was very connected to nature, connected to the elements. There was a strong Indigenous community around that region. So even just having the way of the Indigenous was very present in my life. And it's something that I hold very dear and sacred. And even I weave it into my current work.
Right. Well, as people hear you talk about, Atlantian and Lemurian and Pleiades, there's extraterrestrials involved. They've been involved in our history. And when you went to I think it was your hometown, you told me earlier before we started that you actually consciously saw a reptilian extraterrestrial. Could you tell us about that, and where did you find him, Myra?
Yeah, so it was actually in Melbourne City in Australia. And please, I have to say all of my journey has been without the use of stimulants. My whole awakening, my own healing journey has been always in a conscious, awake, aware state, which I believe is where humanity is evolving to, where we're able to access and see more with our psychic senses. But I think there are a couple of standout features to that evening, is that it was a full moon. And the energy, it was just palpable on that evening. It was just a really high, heightened, astrologically kind of charged evening. There was just something different about the air. And I guess why I'm saying that is because the veils felt thinner to me. Yeah. It's like I could pierce through reality. And I was in a region in Melbourne where the docks are, so a lot of the big cruise liners, but also the, what do they call them? The transportation ships that are bringing cargo in from China, Singapore. And I know that the Illuminati works a lot around the docks because of shipping of certain things in the cargo. So this reptilian was not humanoid looking at all, very what stereotypically of what you would see if you googled an image of a reptilian. It was very much like that for me, and it's only occurred once. But he was, I would say it just had the energy of a male. He was running very, very fast, and I saw him run across the beach, and he was running towards the docks. And the impression that I got is that he was actually late, that he was under pressure, fulfilling a task or fulfilling an order, and he was holding something, like whether it was a briefcase or like a document wallet that was filled with documents. And he was actually quite stressed and running very, very fast to deliver what I could sense was something very important back to the shipping docks. And now this is the funny impression I got. He wasn't particularly that thrilled that he had that assignment. He felt trapped, actually.
Yeah.
And I've heard other people speak about this. I haven't investigated heaps about the reptilians, but I actually felt a little bit sorry for the person, for the individual, because they are too, the more I investigate what you're into, Dave, is like they too have to report to their master. And sometimes they're not particularly thrilled what they're doing here on our planet.
He must have not been afraid of humans seeing him. He was out in the open.
Oh, no. Well, once I locked onto his energy, and he was like, oh, shoot, she's onto me. She's seen me.
Yeah. So what did he do?
And he actually was like, he started moving faster.
Okay. So he didn't have the invisibility cloaking mechanism?
No. Well, if he did, I was able to see through it.
Yeah. Okay. And he was going to a ship. You mentioned the Illuminati. Now, I hear a lot about them. I don't want to talk too much about that, but like in recruitments and stuff, I don't want any part of it. But what are the Illuminati doing there at that shipyard, whatever that you mentioned?
Oh, that's going to get us into so much trouble.
Oh, okay. But it's got to do with supply and demand, I guess. We'll just leave it like that, right?
Yeah, things that are highly desirable to those that have a request list that is very absurd. And there are means to transport that across the waterways.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of a group.
I'd like this episode to air, Dave.
Yeah, it's going to air tomorrow. Tomorrow night will be Thursday, the 11th. So it'll air tomorrow, and I'll send you a link to it. Yeah, I saw a couple of reptilians myself. I saw one in humanoid form, a beautiful young lady, about 25, and she had slits in her eyes when she turned to me, and I felt the energy from her. She was in a human, I guess they call it a skin suit. But I also saw one in my bedroom, and he's only about 5'7", 5'6". He was a shorter one, but he looked like a cobra in the face. And to me, that scared me really bad. I mean, I was getting up and I was conscious on both of these sightings, just like you. I was conscious. And I know what you mean when you see a reptilian, it scares you. But when you see other alien types, like the Pleiades, they're real pleasant, really nice, beautiful people, they don't scare you, but you're mesmerized. And there's a spiritual feeling that you get when you're dealing with other ETs or extraterrestrial. And Myra, I guess you seen UFOs and ETs? Real brief. We'll get off that topic and get on the topics you want to talk about. Myra, have you seen them? Other UFOs and things?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I call them interstellar spacecraft.
Yeah.
um, because that's how I've been taught them by these light beings.
Hmm.
And so I think one thing that's going to, well, has certainly helped me on my journey, and I think this will really serve humanity, is to take these esoteric topics and to actually just break them down really simply. And the more we can make this real and relatable, the better it's going to serve everyone, and it will actually accelerate the disclosure.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, so UFOs for me, yeah, interstellar space travel craft, absolutely. I've seen it. I've seen it in the skies of Australia. I always send out like a prayer or a signal going, hey, like use my backyard to land, please.
Yeah. There you go.
Like you would be such a welcome guest in my home. And I've always had this just reoccurring kind of quest in me that if they were to ever land in my backyard, I would make them feel so at home, so welcome, and I would invite them in and put the kettle on to have a cup of tea with them.
Yeah.
Like that's,
Yeah. Yeah. I,
would you
I,
do the
I,
same, Dave?
yes, I admire your bravery. Me too. I've had people tell me, said, Dave, you've seen these ETs, you met them, you actually spent some time with one humanoid ET. Aren't you afraid? I said, no, I want to keep searching. And I told you earlier about some of the things that's happened to me, and I don't want to say that on air, but it's kind of like trying to say, okay, enough's enough. Don't talk about it no more. But I want to mention this about disclosure, since you mentioned it, and I told you earlier, I think you agreed that disclosure is not being held up by our government, by our president or our military. It's being held off by the cabal, the elites, and the people that are really in charge of this world, the 13 rich families, the bankers, the scientists, the black operations, and all those people. They don't want us to know the secrets that they already know. Then the cat would be out of the bag. We would know what they know. They don't want that. They want that power over us. So I'll sum it up that way. And you agree with it. You don't have to go into delving into it, but if you want
No,
to,
I agree 100% with you. And this is like our biggest cornerstone. Like this is the biggest lever that humanity has to pull.
Mhm.
Because once we pull this lever, you're correct, it dismantles and dissolves so quickly their tight grip of reality. And once we break that spell, we are free to create a new story.
Mhm.
We are free, we will actually return to our sovereignty and begin to tell and to sing like new storylines and new scripts for reality. But this is like the last final piece of like an operation.
Right.
And it's just like this piece here, if we just pull that thread, this is the unraveling. This is the
Yeah.
thread we need to be pulling, Dave. You're
It's
100%
it's
correct.
people like you that's doing the disclosure. I was told, even when that's the only time I'm afraid, I was told not to stop, to keep doing the shows. And I want to talk to everybody. And when I saw, your profile, heard about you, I wanted to talk to you. And I've got other, people in your I guess, expertise coming on. And that's part of what it's all about, the consciousness. But with the extraterrestrials, I really think that people have to wake up and know they're real. And actually, we have a problem too, Myra. We have gatekeepers in ufology who actually they accept some people's stories, but they don't accept others. And they may call this person crazy because like me. I've seen 6 up close UFOs, and that's not normal. I know it's not. So somehow or another, I'm really connected. But I had Linda Moulton Hall, you know her. She told me, she said, you're in a small group because you're going to be incredibly hard to believe because of all that. And that's true, but I don't care. I'm not lying. I swear to it. And I don't drink much at all. And when I saw all these things, I wasn't drinking. I'll say that again. But when I was younger, when I was playing music, I drank. Okay. I did all that stuff, but I didn't do drugs, but I did drink. And Myra, you just said that too. You were sober minded when you saw these things and you're conscious. I believe that, but there's so many people out there that are gatekeepers. I don't want to mention their names. I know a few of them, and they don't even want to talk to me. No, and I've been on a lot of shows, and I do a lot of my own shows, but they for some reason don't want to talk to me. Uh, they might be afraid of what some of the stuff I might say, but while I'm doing my own show, I can talk about that. And I'm glad you're going along with me on some of this. But Myra, you have other things that I know you want to talk about, and Atlantis and Lemuria. Could you tell us how they're related and talk about the pyramids? What were the
Mm.
pyramids for? Was Tesla
Yeah, that's a
right?
brilliant segue because I actually wanted to comment on something you said earlier is that I take retreats, international retreats to Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone like me, that is a little bit difficult because of the current stories that are being regurgitated to keep consciousness boxed in at a certain level.
Right.
So they're only drip feeding the stories that fit the agenda about Egypt, about Giza, the Sphinx, the pyramids. And so I love to speak the untold stories.
Yes.
Like that sums up my journey.
Yeah.
I had some childhood abuse in young age, and I was told not to speak. So this kind of signature got set really quite early on in my life. And so I understand it's like we will not be silenced. And the beautiful thing now about what you and I are doing in this field is there are so many of us now. And when the quantity gets so great, it becomes like an oceanic wave. You can't stop it then. You
I think,
can't
yeah,
stop that.
I think people believe that UFOs are flying out there, but they don't believe they're walking amongst us.
Mhm.
Harvard come up with a study just a couple of weeks ago, and Dr. David Jacobs, I met him a couple of times, a great guy, and I talked to him about my experiences, and he was great. And he said that they walk amongst us. They're humanoids. They're in our government. They work with us. They could be our neighbors. We don't know. I've met a few. I've met, but these were kind of like strange. They have a strange energy, and they just don't act the same as they act like somebody that's lost in a crowd. They might be beginners here on Earth, but they train and they practice. They try to mimic our emotions because they don't have the emotions we have, so they have to try to mimic those to to live amongst us. Have you ever met a humanoid AT that walks amongst us, Myra?
Yeah, like a handful. Yeah, it's a very different experience. You're right. The two that I have met have been through a stronger Pleiadian DNA,
Mhm.
and the frequency is like the refinement is so captivating, but it feels awkward in this reality because we have a denser emotional body here. We have the denser physicality. But to me, their biggest giveaway is their eyes. Their eyes is like just captivating and magnetic. And it's like you could fall into their eyes and be taken to a starry place.
Right.
And I will say too, another kind of feature is that they do have a difficult time really being here. Um,
They,
just like
yeah, they don't like
yeah,
negative
I love
energy.
that description
Yeah.
of what you said when they were in the crowd and they're just walking around a little bit lost.
Mhm.
That's how I relate to them as well.
Yeah. They don't like negative energy. Negative energy.
Oh gosh, no, it grates on their system.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very dense for them to be here, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's what they're waiting for us to come to a consciousness level that we no longer look at us fighting in Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Hamas, look at the bloodshed. We're still like animals in a way. I mean, we're fighting. That's why I opened up by saying the hostilities, hate, and anger, it is not working for us. We need to stop it. Even in the politics, we need to stop it. And hopefully, and they also say that if a third world war started with nuclear weapons, that the extraterrestrials might intervene. They might stop because they don't want this planet destroyed. Is that what you feel too?
Yeah, they've got too much invested here.
Mhm.
Yeah, if that were to play out that timeline, I believe there would be a significant intervention.
Okay, I keep getting you off topic, Myra. Could you tell us the Atlantis and Lemuria, what they were all about, and the pyramids, what they were used for, Myra?
Yeah, so Atlantis for me, again, I didn't even know this term. It certainly came to me through the book experience and then just following a few more breadcrumbs. But I did have a significant experience of a deep soul remembrance
Mm-hmm.
of what I now know to be called, I'd use the word transference. I wouldn't call it bilocation, but a transference of when the cellular structure to the human becomes so multidimensional that you're able to easily read and access the Akashic records. It wasn't a vision, it was a total body transference. And so I was transported into a temple that looked very familiar to me. It became evident that it was a place that belonged to me, was kind of under my guardianship or under my kind of teaching. And this temple, I could tell you every laser cut of every brick that was in the temple. I could tell you the mathematical equation of how the structure was built. Now, in linear Earth time, this experience would have been about 3 seconds. But in quantum, the transference of the quantum ability, I could probably write 3 complete encyclopedias about what was in the temple.
Mm-hmm.
So after that experience, Dave, things really began to escalate for me. There was an opening in the temple that was aligned to Sirius B. It had to do with the geometry and the build of the temple. It had a strong water element to it. And it also had the presence of the dolphins, which are another multi-dimensional being on our planet.
I heard that.
So that was like, that took life up a notch. Like things started to get pretty wild then. So I went really deep into understanding, okay, what is DNA? What is the human capable of? What are the Akashic records? What is in our history books? Because it is so outdated. You know, it's very difficult for me to even read textbooks in the education system, because when you elevate your consciousness, you can see all the gaping holes in it. Yeah. And I'm just like, you know, for a truth seeker, that's like, you know, I go into a bit of a panic.
Yeah.
It's like, I like things to marry up. Like we can't skip over that fact that there are eons and decades of time just omitted from a history book. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But
When you mentioned linear time, Myra, what you're saying, I guess for the people out there, linear time is past, present, and future all at once. Is that right? Or
linear time is what we experience as a human being living in the 3D. So linear time for me is the clock. It's the 60 seconds that equate to a minute. So this is what I would call human dense time. But there is another portion of time, which is true time, which is there is no time.
Yeah.
Which is the quantum through the portal.
Yeah.
And we, as a human being, have the ability to use both avenues of time. So what makes our physical incarnation be so is to split time out. That's why we have a birth and a death.
Right. I
So
found that
this,
out the hard way. I pissed off a ET humanoid. I spent some time with her in Sedona in 2010, and I asked her how old she was. She had the emotion of anger down pat. She turned on me real quick with piercing eyes, and she said, "When are you humans going to get it? There is no time. There is no age." And I looked at her and I said, wow, red flags are popping up all over the place. And I was making notes, mental notes about this. But yeah, you're right. I
I
mean,
like her. I like this chick.
yeah. Well, she actually she come to my house about 5 months later with two younger boys. They were Japanese, and my cousin and I was sitting on a porch, and they come up, but she stayed away, turned her head. I knew it was her. Her name's Hiroko. She's in my book, and I got a picture of my in my book of her. And my cousin and I were sitting on the porch, and they dumbed us down. We couldn't talk. All we could do was look and watch. My cousin couldn't even look. He was looking down at the floor of the porch. So I knew that she was an ET. That's how I found out she was an ET 5 months later when she come to my house with these two young guys. And so that verified it. The other shoe fell, like in journalism, you research things, and when the other shoe falls, you know it's real. You got it. So yes, you might like her. I would like to know more about her, but I after that I never got a chance to see her again. That I know of. I think she was involved in a couple of abductions of me a little bit after that, but that's not my story. I mean, this is not my story. But now Lemuria.
I will say, you know what, the more I research DNA, Dave, the more I realize that, you know, the scientific community are calling it, you know, the junk DNA.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're actually now using another term, which is called non-data
Yeah.
DNA. So once you call something non, you're opening up that there could be then.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so there is data DNA. So where does that data come from? It comes from the other side of the veil. It's quantum. This is our divinity,
Yeah.
kind of residing in the human body. So DNA then became really interesting to me
Well,
because through
it's actually a human history all in our body. And
it's the greatest library you'll ever read.
yeah,
So this is why I'm not deeply worried or concerned about our future,
mhm,
because in my understanding is you cannot stop the wave. So humanity will get to a point where we no longer even have to look outside ourselves to textbooks or to have the interactions with the ETs.
mhm,
We will know it to be true through the light parcels of information, through those data parcels that we're getting given through our DNA. And the cabal or what, you can't stop that. It's
right.
a natural evolutionary process that is happening to everyone, whether they believe UFOs or not, Dave. So the system is designed to work, and this is
Right.
what they're terrified of.
Well, I heard
That's
the
why they're
cabal.
panicking so much.
Yeah, I heard the cabal is starting to fall. That's a rhyme and reason there, but they are, from what indication that we're fighting evil. You know, that's what we're fighting actually, and good and evil. Lemurians. Now
Lemuria, oh yeah, let's
yeah.
go
Could you tell us
there.
about that, Myra? Yeah, tell us
Yeah,
about
so the
Lemuria.
texture and the quality of Lemuria feels entirely different for me than Atlantis. So I came across Atlantis first, and all of the experiences were heavily steered that direction. And for me, my Atlantean, I had a lot of grief. There was a lot of blocked emotion, to use my throat, to be in my power again, to speak about things that were kept silenced on the planet. So that Atlantis for me was heavy going. I personally required a lot of work and a lot of healing for me to do. And it's like I had to kind of move all of that out of the way. And then the timeline and the civilization of Lemuria became available then. So Lemuria for me has such a framework of a deeply feminine presence. It's a very feminine frequency. It has a lot to do with liquid light technology and it's very oceanic. It's very blue. It's very liquidy. And it was a time very, very early on in this planet where we emerged from the waters. This is where the stories of mermen and mermaids come from. This is why it's in our kind of remembrance, and children remember this. This is a Lemurian history on our planet. It's very connected to star Pleiades and Sirians because they were our teachers. They were here teaching, okay, you were going to leave the waters of your mother. And we see that still a Lemurian history represented when the mother carries her baby for 9 months in the waters. This is a Lemurian history speaking to humanity.
That's why you say wisdom, birth, and healing and magic. Is that what you're
correct?
About Myra?
Yeah, so my Lemurian remembrances made me actually become a doula. And a doula is someone that supports a pregnant woman through their pregnancy and their birth and their aftercare. But I can assure you, when I started out, I had no desire to be with women's work. It's like, this is why I keep saying, it's like, I never went really seeking this. It is a natural kind of opening in my life. And I guess my job is, as you know, your job is, and everyone on the planet, we have to trust the signs. We have to trust our intuition. We have to trust those little synchronistic moments. We have to trust that when we have an interaction with an ET, that it is real. So often we just negate or sweep those experiences under the carpet. And I'm like, no, what you went through was real. And a part of my work, I was in my early 30s, and I started getting women in their 20s reach out to me for help and consultation and healing work. Dave, do you know the women that found me were survivors of satanic ritual abuse or alien abduction?
Wow. And they come
and I'm like,
yeah.
How are they coming to me? How do they? And this is what I think. I actually believe people when they talk, when they tell me about this stuff.
Me too.
Because I remember the feeling I had to go through of like, I'm not crazy. This is real. What is happening to me? And the more I stepped into believing myself and trusting myself, the more it opened up and became very clearly visible then. And now I don't question myself. I don't doubt myself anymore.
No, you're like me.
I think we need more powerful leaders like that. Yeah.
And I'm
so for me, it's like the party's just getting started. Oh, I love this. This is so beautiful.
I'm doing a kid's book.
I love that, Dave.
ET. That's the thing I'm thinking about doing, and I keep going with it. You know, there's something like you. It keeps pressing me to do this stuff. Bring ETs and humans together. Maybe we'll have that consciousness that'll all gather together and have peace. But now, the pyramids, Myra, those power plants, what were they?
Yeah, well, they have many uses. So just as a a glass, a cup can have many. So I could drink this water, or I could pour the water into the ocean, or I could water a plant with that. Pyramids have many uses as well. So, but I'd say the main players on the planet are pyramids. There's not many present left, but a lot of them were made with clear quartz crystal. This is going back a long time in our history. So clear quartz crystal, a lot of them are power generators. So you can run unlimited electricity. You can power the whole planet's civilizations through the connections and alignments of pyramids. So that's one use. They are also used as stargates. to connect in with our galactic neighbors
Mm-hmm.
because they have good custodianship over, would you not want to interact with a higher evolved civilization
Yes.
to learn a few things but from them? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I would.
Yeah, that's why I enjoy talking to you. People like yourself,
Yeah.
and I love going into this deep, consciousness thing and about thinking about what is really real, and quit thinking about what's in the past, because the past is not the truth. Now, was Tesla right about what he was doing, Myra? Tesla.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you shut him down.
Yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah. And there's many, many, many others. So the rough conditions of that time is that individuals were getting the hits of information. So when there's a handful of these inventors and innovators connected to the unified field, and they're putting their downloads into manifest form, and there's only a handful of you, it's very easy to send a group of people out and to shut and destroy your studies.
right.
But the difference is now in the energetic climate that we're in now is that there are thousands and thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of us now inventing this way in the garages at their home.
Mm-hmm.
And when there is so many of us, you are under-resourced as the cabal. You are under-resourced
Yes.
as the officials that knock on your door in the black SUVs,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a sheer number of us now. I've been downloaded many inventions myself through my Atlantian remembrance. So to get back to pyramids, they're healing. Some of them are medical places. There are places of healing. There are places of DNA rehabilitation. They are places of interstellar communication. There are places of signposts and watch posts as well to ensure that other galactic passerbyers are behaving and adhering to the protocol of your planet.
Yeah,
Because once you start opening up, it's like you realize, oh, this is a bigger playing field. Like we actually need protocols now to ensure the equilibrium of our planet.
Yeah, I'm jealous of you being able to go to Egypt and do your studies there. That's great. That must be great. It's not dangerous, is it? Is it safe there,
It's
Myra?
not dangerous. No, I personally, I do have to do a bit of work over. I do feel fearful, not for my life. It's just when a frequency is so new and a storyline is so new to share. Sometimes I just personally have my own like self-doubt that I have to conquer. But once I'm there, I'm locked and loaded, I'm good to go, and then I just unleash.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the men in black don't drive those black limo cars anymore. They drive anything, anything.
Yeah, because their budget's getting cut.
Yeah. Now, they talk about this reset. I know you've talked to people about the reset, the third dimension to the fourth, fifth dimension. And they said we had a reset in 2012. At least I had somebody on the internet that told me, where were you at in 2012? They got mad at me because I said, well, that was the calendar that was supposed to have, said, the Mayan calendar that said the end of the world. Said no, it wasn't the end, it was a reset. So here you have spiritual awakening process, Kunalini awakenings, and evolution of human consciousness. Could you talk about that, Myra?
Yeah, I can absolutely tell you where I was. I was deep in ceremony that I facilitated. But this speaks to the Mayan and the Aztec calendars, the long count calendar, which well and truly is, the recording of time, of larger scales of time. So the 21st of December in 2012 was a very significant point. It was the ending of the Mayan calendar. It was also the position of planet Earth that was furthest away from the center point of the grand central sun. So it's what we could say, this is the furthest point that we are away from our spiritual home. Therefore, every day after the 21st of December 2012, we are on a trajectory of returning home. We are returning every step now back to our spiritual heritage. So there is very much a galactic reset, a reset for planet Earth. This is where the term came from, return of the divine feminine. If you, any of your viewers, do women's work, or they might go to a circle, there is a massive rise of women's work returning, the work of mystery schools. The reason that is because it's now speaking to our DNA. We're getting those beautiful solar flares and blasts of real intense light electrical storms that are all speaking, awakening humanity. And every turn of a day, we are a step closer to our spiritual divine heritage.
So that's awakening. And a lot of, like, not a lot of people. There are some people that are awakening right now. And then there's some that are waiting to find out what are the signs or symbols or how you feel when you are starting to be awakened, Myra.
The classic example, like the textbook example, is you begin to revisit your childhood and you're like, oh, okay, there are some things that were not fantastic. There'll be a process of grief, of healing, the movement of suppressed emotions. Usually that's the classic starting point. What begins to happen is you must understand there's a huge amount of pressure that the body must be kept under to lock itself into trauma and to hold trauma in the body. So if you imagine a large beach ball and I'm using my hand to hold it under a body of water, massive beach ball, like imagine how much pressure and effort is used to hold that beach ball under the water. Now, when I remove my hand, the beach ball is going to fly up into the sky, isn't it?
Right.
This is what is also called the Kunalini awakening. It's like when you take the hand off, the amount of pressure that was used to hold yourself in a trauma story or a bond of something that wasn't serving you, that energy gets released. It's got to travel up the spine, usually releases out through the crown or out through the throat. But this then can be very shaky ground. A lot of people then put psychoses with a spiritual awakening process.
Really? Okay.
But it's simply because your view of reality gets shattered. You're like, oh, I'm no longer the person I thought I was, or the midlife crisis point. Oh, I'm no longer my job. You mean there's more to life than my corporate identity? You mean there's more to life than my bank account? I put all my self-worth into my job and my status. Now, this is why COVID was such a great story for the awakening process. Because on a global scale, people were removed from their jobs. And you realize, oh, so this isn't reality. I'm not that. This is the positive side to the COVID story. There are many agendas at play, but it is how we can use our pain and our suffering becomes the greatest fuel we need to embrace to propel ourselves on the ascension path, propel ourselves into purpose. And when you start questioning your reality, what's the first thing you do? You start looking for truth.
Yes. That's what I do. I've had dreams about my childhood. I go back to my places where, and just like you're going back to your hometown to try to reminisce and bring back these feelings. And the awakening, I think I see a lot of people, it's happening to them, but they don't understand it. They're fed up with a lot of different things in life and history and what's going on in our world today. You mentioned galactic dot dash notation, Myra. What's that? What is that?
Yeah, this again is from one of my Akashic remembrances in Atlantis. And galactic dot dash notation was, in my experience, is a universal language that galactic nations use to communicate to one another. Because at some point when you're doing interstellar travel, there's a lot of cross-pollination going on. There's a lot of meetings, there's a lot of travel, there's a lot of sharing of ideas. So there needs to be a universal language that can be understood at that level. It is a dash and a dot. And they use that in different arrangements to communicate themes, messages, time. And an incredible thing that happened in the evolution of our humanity here on Earth is when they released the digital watch. Because for the first time since the fall of Atlantis, humanity was able to see galactic dot dash notation again.
Really?
On their digital watches. And the beautiful thing is that humanity began to see 11 dot 11 again. We were not able to see that in our consciousness before because we had the clock dial face with the two hands telling the time. So even our technology age, in the right ways, is actually supporting our spiritual awakening process.
Wow.
So it was a very big win for humanity when we invented the digital watch here.
How about the teletype? It sounds like you're talking about telegrams and teletype type dot dashes, Myra. That's
right. It got used there as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of computer programming is still ones
Zero.
and circles, which is galactic dot dash notation. So our whole computer programming system is still galactic dot dash notation. And our galactic neighboring, they know this. We just haven't unlocked the power of what we're sitting in.
Yeah. Can you believe, Myra, our hour is up and it went so fast? And I got one more question to ask you. Is your son filling your house full of coconuts now?
He comes to my retreats in Vanuatu, which is the South Pacific Islands off the coast of Australia. And yeah, this is how much he loves coconuts. He'll have the milk, the flesh. He scoops the flesh out with the spoon. He brings the bowls home. Absolutely. He loves everything to do with coconuts, coconut water, coconut milk.
It's healthy for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're gonna enjoy this show, Myra Medhurst, and thank you so much, all the way from Australia. And you have some adventures and a lot of things going on. I'd like to have you back on sometime in the near future. And if you I know you have a lot more to talk about. We didn't get through all your notes and all the things that you do. There's a lot more that you do, and I know when you're counseling Fortune 500 companies, that's doing good. I mean, they must really like and trust what you're doing, Myra. Myra,
you'll be surprised how many people at the top are interested in their Atlantean remembrances.
Yeah, I know I am, because I want to make sense. I want to get pieces of the puzzle put together every time I talk to somebody. And I want to thank you very much, Myra Medhurst from Australia. This is Dave Emmons in The Strange Reality. And we hope you enjoy the show, and give us some comments. And also I will put some of Myra's contacts on the narrative when I post the video. And I want to thank you, and good night. Good night, Myra.
Thank you.
Or good morning.